Hello lovelies! Welcome back to my channel. My name is Eric Addish. In this video, I've got something really exciting for you guys. Last week, I got to catch up with Sandra Inman from the Mystery Witch School. We went through and interviewed one another. It was the first sort of collaboration that I've ever done. So it was a lot of fun getting to know her through the process and hearing more about her story and her experiences. And also the work that she's doing in the community and the information that she's putting forward. I will say there are a couple of elementals that were playing tricks on us that night, so there are lights going off, there was a storm going, there's a couple of peaks in audio, but it is definitely still watchable, still entertaining, and definitely still worth your time. So if you're wanting to hear more about Sandra's thoughts about all things mystical, magical, and her work as a magical business owner, definitely stay tuned, but I'll leave you to Sandra. So here we are with Sandra Inman from the Mystery Witch School. So I'm going to go through these questions that I have here. The first of which is, I wanted to ask you now, the Mystery Witch School, you teach a kind of eclectic Wicca. What sort of drew you to that path over the multitude of other sort of spiritual paths?
Oh, when I came to it, it felt like home, essentially. I first came across Wicca when I was 14 through my sister, because she was 5.5 years older than me, and she used to bring home a lot of books from the occult bookstore. And I came across a book written by one of Cochrane's students. I can't remember her name now. It was Witchcraft and the Sixth Sense. And I really enjoyed the book, and I related to it, but I didn't think much else about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then later, when I was about 21, my sister and I came across a house belonging to a friend of my mother's, and on the veranda of the house was this carving of a woman sitting on top of a cauldron. And this carving was at every corner along the veranda. And it triggered a memory of the book that I'd read back when I was 14. And there was just like this feeling that I just had to go and explore it more. And so my sister and I went then to an occult bookstore, and I bought a book on Wicca, Witchcraft. It was Scott Cunningham's Witchcraft, Modern Witchcraft. I've forgotten what it's called now. The Truth About Witchcraft Today.
Oh, Truth About Witchcraft Today, yes.
Yeah, and I don't know, it felt like home all of a sudden. Yeah, I could just say that it feels like home.
I think I've heard that sort of sentiment from a lot of people who come to Wicca, is that, you know, the ritual, the movement, all of those things, they definitely talk about this idea of coming home, or, you know, finding that thing. It almost feels nostalgic the first time you partake in those kind of rituals. Yeah, I definitely resonate with a lot of what you're saying. So tell me, how do you progress from you know, this interest in Wicca and in seeing these carvings to taking that to a professional place?
Over a lot of years. So at first it was about, how do I learn about this? And then the next thing is, how do I find other people who are also practicing this?
Mm-hmm.
So I found a coven and spent quite a few years with the coven. We hived off, formed another coven. And then I ended up just going back to being solitary again, because I moved and everyone moved away. Practicing on my own from there, and also then finding that the practices, because this is going back to the early to mid 1990s, and there wasn't really a lot of deeper stuff going on in books. Like, you couldn't really find that many books related to magic or Wicca or witchcraft that sort of really went into a bit more of a mystical place like you sort of can now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was feeling that something was missing, and I couldn't find that in the craft with the contacts that I had, or the books that were available pre-internet. And so I ended up going to other traditions and searching, you know, with Buddhism. I was looking at ceremonial magic and some of the writings of people from that tradition, and came across Gurdjieff and that school of the Fourth Way. Ended up in a sort of a quasi-Sufi group that ended up turning into a cult. But because of that, because of that, it actually made me go back to the craft. It was actually the cult experience that took me back to it, to practice again. It's almost like it forced me, and the yearning for it prior to me leaving this group became there was quite a few miraculous things that came back to me, magically came back to me. I got an anathema, practically came down from the sky and fell on my lap. I got a new cup, chalice to work with, and both of these things appeared to me on my birthday prior to leaving the group. It was like, because I'd put it out there, I wanted to come home again. The universe just said, okay, well, here's your tools and you're going to need them. So yeah, it was about coming back to magic then, and I haven't stopped since then. And that was about 10 years ago.
So how long have you been functioning in like a professional capacity? Professional
capacity as in a business, doing it for money. I have been only doing it that way since November this year, actually, because prior to that I was teaching, but I was doing it for free. Mm-hmm. I've been teaching now for about 6 or 7 years for free. So I thought it was either I stopped doing that because I'm a bit exhausted from it, or I actually do make this a career path, because I don't have the energy to do both. So I need to either earn money or teach. So I thought, well, if I can earn money from teaching, that is much more, seemed to be where the next step was.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously a lot of this professional function is through the Mystery Witch School. Having taught for such time and, you know, now teaching in this professional way, how did you sort of overcome the expectation to know everything before you started teaching?
It's a process of overcoming.
You know everything?
Because I don't know everything. There's a lot I don't know, and there's things I'm not particularly interested in as well, other than just an academic interest. I think that each of us have aspects of the craft that we really go towards and enjoy and want to explore more of, and there's other parts that are like, oh yeah, that's good, but I really don't feel like I can really put my energy into really learning it. Mm-hmm. The way that other people do. So I don't know everything at all. Like I'm not that great with astrology. I found that quite challenging when we were doing astrology in the coven. So I would always, recommend people go to somebody else for that kind of thing. I know I have a basic knowledge, but that's not my area of expertise.
Mm-hmm. So is it by sort of deciding on an area that you want to become an expert in, that you sort of are able to overcome need to know the whole broad sort of entirety of magic? Yeah,
absolutely, because it's such a big topic and there's so many things that you can do in it that I think it's very difficult for anyone to do all of it.
A friend of mine recently said to me, because she works in a coven, and she was talking about how when you're in those kind of groups, it's okay that you sort of narrow down that field of expertise, because you've got all these other people who have their area of interest. So you sort of have those people that you can go to get those things that you maybe can't do or don't know how to do. And having those dynamic groups, I think, are a really great way to sort of not be left out of all the fun things, but, not have to dive as deeply as maybe other people are.
Oh, yeah. Can you imagine how much time it takes to learn all of this thoroughly? Because everything has deeper layers, and they can go deeper and deeper and deeper. It takes lifetimes, I think, to learn all of this. Yeah.
Yeah. So we can't talk about business without talking about money. So I wanted to sort of ask you about overcoming one's shadows in relation to money.
Money is an interesting one, especially in the spiritual communities, because for some reason in our culture, we've associated money with evil. We've associated money with it's not spiritual to make money from doing what you do. It's not spiritual to ask for money for any magic or anything. And I think that was something that was even written in those 13 conventions that of being a witch back in, I think it was the 1970s. And yet other cultures understand that concept of exchanging energy. So if you want to go to somebody for a spell, like a cunning man or a cunning woman, or a root worker or somebody, you know you've got to exchange something for that. And even if it's not money in some cultures, or in our past it wasn't so much money, maybe we'd give them a chicken or some fabric or something for clothing, or we'd do something for them. There was always that exchange of energy. In our modern culture, especially in the West, if someone gave me a chicken, that's not really that helpful. You know, I'm not a farmer. I don't work on a farm. I don't think I could chop a head off a chicken and cook, you know, do everything I have to do to prepare to eat. And it's not going to pay the electricity. It's not going to pay the mortgage. So we have to understand that money in our culture is a form of energy exchange, and it is a way that we can exchange something for something. And it is a roof over our heads. It is food in our modern culture. And to get over that thing about money being a bad thing, because it's not. It's simply a neutral tool that we use to allow us to have freedom and choices in our culture.
So then what is EFT, and how can that help us to sort of integrate our shadows around money?
EFT is emotional freedom technique, or tapping. So you may have seen videos on YouTube of people tapping various acupuncture points and saying things at the same time. It is a form of meridian therapy related to acupuncture, and it's probably roughly about 30 to 40 years old. And what it does is it creates a pattern interrupt between the mind and the body. So we have emotional reactions to things, which is just chemicals going through our nervous system. And we also have beliefs associated with those emotions. And those beliefs come from our past, from our culture, from our tribe, our family, our schooling, the spiritual tradition we were brought up in. And these beliefs inform us on these beliefs, particularly ones about money, come from back then and our culture. And so if we've got any blocks regarding, you know, I don't deserve to earn good money from this, I'm being greedy if I ask for a certain amount of money in exchange for my work, then those beliefs can actually stop you from earning money doing what it is that you want to do, and you can actually block it. So EFT acts as a pattern interrupt to change the emotional attachment to the belief, and then the belief actually dissolves. So it works on the energy system.
So then is there any role in your practice, or should there be any role in people's practice broadly for money spells? Or is it more important to work on integrating these shadows and trying to change your relationship to a healthier one in terms of money?
Both. Money spells are good, but if you're really wanting to have the freedom and the choices that money can give you, then start changing your attitude towards money, especially if your money spells aren't working. Money spells seems to be one of the biggest things within the magical community, because we have this attitude towards money, and this attitude towards whether we believe we deserve it, or people like us don't have money, those kinds of beliefs. If you're going to do a money spell, you need to be aligned with money. You need to have a good feeling about money. Money needs to be your friend. And the more open and accepting you are towards believing you do deserve to earn money, you have every right to be wealthy, even if you are spiritual, then the money's more likely to come to you in your magic, and your magic will be more successful. But if you're not aligning those inner beliefs with the money you're wanting, your spells are probably only going to bring you bits and pieces of small amounts of money. And that's not helpful.
Definitely. Now, you spoke earlier about how, well, when we were talking about expertise, and you spoke about how astrology isn't really an area that you focus in, and if somebody was interested in that, that you would direct them somewhere else. So I sort of wanted to ask you about, like, how do we work towards, you know, overcoming like scarcity mindset and things like this, to work towards collaboration, rather than as sort of business owners in the same sorts of fields. How do we work towards that as opposed to competition?
Again, it's that inner work on ourselves. We compete with each other because we're afraid we're going to miss out. Or that person's going to take something of ours. So we're coming from a fear base, from a scarcity mentality. And we've been conditioned to be like that. That's how we've been brought up. We've brought up in a culture that really honors competition and sees competition as being a really healthy and a really good thing. It's connected to Darwinism, and a lot of some of the research that has been done, we realized that Darwin wasn't the only person who was thinking about these things back then. There was also other people, and they came up with totally different ideas about how nature has evolved, and one of them was collaboration. And he sort of wasn't as popular as Darwin with the elite, and so I think his name was Layman. And so Darwin's theories were accepted because they suited the elite, but his weren't. Collaboration is really just understanding that when we collaborate with each other, we're acting as a community, and we can share resources. We can refer each other to other people that we know. And if we're not so afraid of missing out, of going without, and our ego is not so scared of the consequences of going without, which is basically why it's creating greed and competition in the first place, because it's trying to protect us. If we realize that as a community, we can thrive together, because that's how we humans have survived, because we worked in communities, we shared resources, we worked together. We didn't thrive as a human species by competing with each other in our tribes. We worked together in our tribes. So that's, I think, within the magical community, because we're a small community of the greater community, if we can not be so competitive with each other and worried about, oh, so-and-so might seem better than me, or suffer from comparisonitis and worrying about whether they're going to take your people away from you. It's just about being collaborating, because even if you're two people teaching the same thing, you're going to have a different style of teaching, you're going to have a different way of teaching, and your emphasis is going to be on different things. And different people within the community are going to resonate more with one person than they are with another, because they're going to be looking for a match for them. So there's always people around who are going to be interested in working with one person over another, simply because of that resonance. So if we share our resources and share with what we're doing with each other and make it a more collaborative, friendly structure, then I think we have a much better chance of surviving.
Beautifully put. Perfect. I definitely have a lot of opinions about money and economy and things like that, so it was really good to hear that. I guess I want to ask you a really broad question. What is magic for?
Magic itself, I think, is just simply to be able to make our lives easier, and to be able to create our lives the way we want to create our lives, and to do with our lives what we want to do. And magic's a way of getting resources to help us do that, clear the pathways to doing that, bring the people to us we need to do that with, and aligning everything so that we can create, because I think we're here to create. When I was with the sort of Sufi group, I spent 4 years not practicing magic. And that was hard. It was really hard. I would never go back to not practicing magic again. Having the experience of practicing it and not practicing it is good, actually. It's good to have the experience. Because I realized that magic just makes your life so much easier. And if you're not practicing magic, life's tough.
So what's the role of mysticism in magic, and how can we work to reintegrate mysticism and bring that together with magic?
With mysticism, it's more about the inner work, and the realization that we are divine and that we are creators, and to really understand who and what we are. So the mysticism is about clearing away the ego crap and clearing away the conditioning, the programming that has us believing that we are limited beings, that has us believing that who we really are isn't good enough, that we shouldn't express who we are in the world, that we have to be what the common culture wants us to be. And the mysticism is really about finding our God nature, our goddess nature, and coming from our higher, truer self, so that we can then use magic, work with magic to create a life that is more in alignment with that higher divine mind. Mm-hmm. So that's where I see mysticism as being the inner work and magic being the outer work.
Yeah. So when we're looking at things like magic and mysticism, and we're in this modern age of information, do you think that, or do you feel that there's any reason that we should still have secret information, or should everything just be free and out there for anyone to read?
It's funny because I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, and it's interesting because there's one school of thought is you don't want to go giving, because magic is a double-edged sword. You can influence for positive and you can influence for negative. Some argument is, well, you don't want to give a box of matches to a 5-year-old. So if people aren't emotionally mature enough to be able to deal with maybe the ethics of magic, then, you know, maybe they shouldn't have it. But then the other argument is that if everybody had access to magic and magic was a norm and it was part of the way all of us lived, the education around magic and the consequences of doing magic, perhaps that is harmful, would be more understood. And so if you're limiting people and saying, well, you shouldn't be studying magic, that person's probably going to go in the back door anyway and study and do it anyway. And then they're doing it in a way that may be full of resentment and full of more negative emotions, which may cause them to maybe be more harmful towards themselves and other people through it. So I think that, you know, if we're going to do it, then we really do have to do it. We really have to put it out there and not be afraid to educate people about it at the same time.
So leaping off that idea of sort of like, what if witchcraft and magic were a norm? Do you think magic is for everyone, or are there some people who shouldn't practice magic?
Well, I think when you look at some of the political leaders, and they probably practice it anyway. There's a lot of people in the elite practice magic and were part of magic circles in history. Yeah, they probably shouldn't be practicing it because look what they're doing to the world. So in some ways you could say if somebody is going to misuse a knife and use the knife as a weapon in ways that are harmful and very destructive in the larger sense, then they shouldn't be given a knife. But then it's like, well, where do you draw the line? So that's a tough question because on one hand, I can see the dangers in it. And on the other hand, I can also see that from a spiritual point of view and a mystical point of view, we have to take a chance to be able to step up and decide for ourselves what's right and what's wrong for ourselves, rather than not doing something because we're afraid of consequences or something like that. Mm. I don't know if that answers the question.
No, I'm not sure there is an answer to that question.
No, I don't think there is either.
Not really. I wanted to ask as well, you have this role of a teacher in your community in this online space that you have built. What do you think of the role of a priest or priestess sort of in these like pagan community groups, or even in a solitary practice? Like what do you think that word means, priest and priestess, and what role does it have in an online, in-person, or solitary situation?
Oh. I think that a priest or a priestess really carries a certain amount of responsibility, and that in the physical world we are like emissaries, or that there's that connection to the divine. So even as a solitary priest or priestess, there is that. It's almost like we have a I don't know what the word is. It's a responsibility. I think that's what it is. It's responsibility. So it's taking responsibility for making sure that we are acting from a higher self place in the world. And if you're solitary, then you'll be influencing the people in your life with that, and leading by example, and hopefully sharing that that knowledge of nature and that connection to nature, and that that way of being with other people and with nature and with animals, plants, etc., with other people. If you are leading a group, whether it's online or physically, I think that's also about leading by example and inspiring other people to do the same. So it's a lot about inspiring people to be who they really are and helping them express that in the world.
So what are the things that make a good leader?
I think it's really about inspiring people more so than it's inspiring people to be the best they can be, and helping them find their true self, rather than sort of telling them what to do and scaring them into doing it. It's more about educating and inspiring, and really I think it should be about inspiring people.
Yeah. So a lot of the work that you do through the Mystery Witch School is very much focused on helping people to lay the groundwork and get their practice set up when they sort of don't know what they're doing or how to proceed. How do you feel about people then going off book and doing maybe more unconventional magical kind of practices?
Go for it. It's like, you know, if you're in high school, you've got different teachers for different subjects. So one person isn't going to be able to teach you everything you need in life. And even though I like to give people a foundation, just to make it easy for them to start somewhere, I don't expect that they're only going to listen to me, or that they're going to stop suddenly reading books and only listen to me. I encourage people to actually go and research other things and try other things out there. Yeah. So I don't know. It's magic is so broad. I haven't just stuck to pagan magic. I've certainly looked at ceremonial magic and, you know, the Kabbalah and that kind of thing as well. So, you know, it is really just about seeing what's out there and exploring when you feel comfortable enough to do it.
Yeah, I've always said that one of the greatest gifts my teacher sort of gave me during my training process was that he would often take us out to other people's events and get us involved in different spaces in that magical communities, you know, and that intersectionality sort of thing. So it's always been something that I've been really grateful for. And I think a good teacher like will tell you that you can't find everything you need just with them. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I do want to ask as well, if people want to learn more about the Mystery Witch School, about you, about EFT and your involvement in that, where can they go? Where can they find you?
Well, you can go to my website, which is mysterywitchschool.com. My Facebook page is a really good place to go because I put a lot of stuff on there. So that's also called Mystery Witch School. And then there's YouTube, where I have a lot of my YouTube videos. I also do Facebook Lives on the Mystery Witch School page as well.
Yes,
and
which are fantastic.
So, and they kind of line up with the YouTube, but what I find I do on my lives is I seem to get a little bit deeper with them than I do on YouTube for some reason. A different ambience when you're talking to people and you know there's people there, to just talking to a camera, which happens on YouTube. So there's sometimes a little few extra things in there with the Facebook Lives, and there will be on YouTube. And people ask questions, of course, on the lives, which helps. I love it when people ask questions. With the Mystery Witch School 101 training program that I have for people who are wanting to start a Wiccan or witchcraft practice, an eclectic one, but don't know where to start and don't know what to do because there's so many practices out there. I give them everything that they need, but there's also room for them to ask questions as well, because that's when we really learn, is when we ask questions. And that's something we can't do with a book. We can't ask the book a question. It's not going to give us a response.
No,
so that's a big part of learning.
Yeah, and having somebody who has that experience, who can tell you, you know, using personal experience, you know, what it is that you're doing and how it works and why it works, and all your, you know, your own ideas about all those things. So that's really always helpful. But of course there will be links in the description as well, to your channel and everything else if people want to have a look at that. But otherwise, I'm really happy to have had you. So thank you so much for answering
good to be
questions
here.
and
thank you for inviting me.
Get to know you a bit better. So thank
Great.
you so much.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, bye. I hope you enjoyed that chat with Sandra. As I said, all of her links and whatnot will be below so that you can go and check out her channel, her Facebook. She has awesome Facebook Lives, and it would be nice to get some more people over there asking questions and interacting. You know, it's definitely something I'd like to do myself at some point. But yeah, just like go, I'm hoping to collaborate more with Sandra in the future, to share ideas, and maybe even get some other people on the channel as well. This was my first time doing anything like this, and it was a lot of fun. I think it might have been Sandra's as well, so I think we were both a little bit nervous during the video, but I hope that you've still enjoyed it. I hope that you got a lot from it, and I hope that you have some interesting points to leap off from. Until next time, I hope that you're well. Mwah. Bye.